Okay, I would like to call the Policy Committee of the Portland Board of Public Education to order. It is Monday, August 11th, 2025, and we're meeting in an online format. Today we have with us Policy Committee members, School Board Vice Chair and District 1 Representative Mickey Bondo, District 2 Representative Ali, at-large Representative Yusra Ali. We have Board Chair Lentz, and we have Student Representative Zachary Lee. We also have Dr. Sarah Warren. Could you give us your updated title, Dr. Warren? I'm not sure if I have it.
Sure. Yeah, Chief of Strategy and Operations.
Okay, great. Thank you. And we have Dr. Angela Atkinson-Dwina, who is the director of elementary schools. Okay, and I'm Maya Lena, and I'm the chair of the policy committee. And this is my first experience chairing a committee, so please bear with me while I get through this tonight. Um, I don't believe we have anyone giving public comment. We don't have any attendees in the room right now, so I'm going to skip over public comment.
Is it okay if I go ahead and share the deck, Chair
Sure.
Lena?
Yep.
That might help guide us through as well, if I can get to it here. Easier said than done. I'm not a Zoom aficionado. Okay, hold on, that didn't work. Let me try again. Okay.
Thank you. So tonight we are going to be discussing updating the Cliff Island Elementary School Day. And I believe we'll be voting on policy BDE, which is about standing committees, special committees, and the citizen advisory panels. We're going to review the draft committee agenda for this school year. And I believe that's what is on our agenda tonight.
This is the deck just includes a little bit of an overview of the committee because the committee has changed since last year. So
Great, thank you.
Sorry.
Okay, so we do not have any public comment tonight, and so I will turn it over to Dr. Warren or Dr. Atkinson-Dwina, whoever is going to talk about this piece.
Great. Actually, Dr. Atkinson-Dwina, since you're here, I'll just hand it over to you.
Okay. I'm gonna, is there more in the slide deck, Sarah? I'm just looking through there.
Are you not able to see the Cliff Island request on your screens right now?
No, I think I can now. I'm just
okay.
I've
Just
got,
want to make sure I
little
I never
screen, lots of different things open. So
yeah,
I'm bringing to
one
you,
slide.
yeah, I'm bringing to you a proposal to revise our Cliff Island school schedule. You can see that it would to the current schedule, the day runs from 8:30 a.m. to 3:15 p.m. and then there's a Friday early release at 11 a.m. And that historically, apparently that release was so that students could come into Portland and take swimming lessons. That has not happened in the last 2 years that I've been here, and I'm not sure when it stopped. And I would really like to propose that we have that we update the schedule so that the day starts at 8:20, goes to 3:05, and that the Wednesday early release happens at 12:20 p.m. This would align the schedule with our Peaks Island schedule, and it would allow our teacher, who is new this year, we have a new teacher at the Cliff Island School this year, to participate in our Wednesday PD. Most likely she would have to participate virtually, but it still would allow her to participate during that time. It also does increase the instructional time for our Cliff students. So we'd like to see that happen as well. And then I'll just see if anybody has any questions.
I don't have any questions and I'm not seeing any hands raised. Oh, Chair Lenz, go ahead.
Thank you, Charlena. I was just, can you just remind folks, Dr. Atkinson-Duina, about how many students this would affect?
So we expect Cliff to open with 2 students in the fall, and oftentimes one of the students who starts with us in the fall leaves before winter. So we just have one of the students for a short time.
And just for clarification, Chair Lena, we're requesting, if possible, that the committee would discuss and vote on this tonight, potentially vote to pass it forward to the board so that we can take it to the full board for a vote tomorrow evening, ideally. We're just trying to do this to update the schedule in time for the school year if we can.
That sounds great. If there are no other questions, I'll just give it another few seconds to see if anyone raises a hand and then, oh, okay, yes. Member Bondo?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair. I just wonder about the one student. So that one student from Cliff. So I try to understand the instruction time for that student. Then we have to change the whole entire schedule. I just want to get a little more clarification on that.
So we would like to change the schedule for the student. I think it's a minor, I mean, since it does only impact one student, the family has already been engaged around the changes that we are making. They're supportive of the changes and prepared for them. It is something that while we didn't just have those conversations in time for our regular calendar decision in the spring, we did have conversations throughout the spring with our new teacher and the family, just to make them aware that we were hoping to change the schedule so that it would better align with our district-wide schedules.
All right. So are we expecting some more students in the future, or just, well, how we see the ratio in the
So
coming
there are
year?
50, there are 50 year-round families or people who live on Cliff Island. We do know of 2 other, I think, young children who I believe are out on Cliff Island that we would expect to come to school sometime with us in the future. There is, I think our commitment to the island communities has centered on supporting them to maintain the island life out there.
Mhm.
Without a school on the islands, it's hard to maintain it as to keep it up as a year-round community. So that's, I think, where the district has supported the islands around this.
Okay. The reason I'm asking is that we have a one family in a like you said, Dr. Atkinson, they already been engaged for that change. So are we going to be open for other changes if we had some more parents coming to ask for it? Or if we change, yeah, hold on. If we change right now, so that mean everybody is going to go to the same line. If we have some additional students coming on board in the years, or we're going to keep changing what families are requesting. I'm just asking, just to wonder.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I may not be following the question, but this
I-
is a change that has come from the district. Primarily, it's come because we've seen that we are not having the same number of instructional minutes for our students on Cliff
Okay.
Island. And then the other big reason that we have requested the change is because it allows us to better support the teacher who is out there
Oh,
teaching,
okay.
and the
Mm-hmm.
island can be pretty isolating.
Mm-hmm.
The ferry ride, Peaks is like a 15-minute ferry ride to get in from Cliff Island. It's much longer than that. It's not easy. And so just really it is around like making sure that we can support a teacher out there.
Oh, okay. Right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair.
Um, Committee Member Lee, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just keep this super brief, and it's probably like not super productive. But I was just wondering because it seemed like your explanation was um, kind of maybe more centered around the change to the early release schedule, and I definitely looking at it was feeling like 11 a.m. seems like a really early release to me. But I was just wondering about like the reasoning behind the general pushing the start of the school day 10 minutes earlier, um, and just why that change.
That one is just really to help us align with the Peaks schedule and not to have another school that is just out on its own schedule right now. So if our Cliff students currently go to school for 30 hours and 20 minutes. And mainland elementary schools have about 31.5 hours a week. I think, if we were to move forward, I did look at just the Peaks and the Cliff schedule earlier in the spring to see, like, to try and understand more about why we weren't the same number of hours across the district. And really what the challenge is that around the Peaks issue is that we try and bring the Peaks teachers into the mainland for some of our PD on Wednesdays. And so in order to get them the ferry schedule work, we need to schedule them a little bit earlier to do that. So there's not a major reason why that the Peaks and Cliff, why I moved the Cliff ending time to that time, other than I was just trying to align with Peaks. They often have meetings after school at the same time because they're led by the school leader. So if they are having any kind of after school meeting with the teacher, if we have different end times, that creates some complications around like how long the teacher can stay, when she can participate in the meetings, those kinds of things.
Okay, thank you. That makes a lot of sense and is sort of what I would have guessed, but thank you.
Okay. So I'm gonna ask for a motion to vote. Is that how this goes, Board Chair Lynn?
Yes, you would ask for a motion that says that you'd be adjusting the Cliff Island times to start at 8:20 and the early release on Wednesday at 12:20.
Okay, thank you for your support with this. Okay, so I'm going to be looking for a motion to make the calendar change request for the Cliff Island School to the proposed start time of 8:20 a.m. ending at 3:05 p.m. with Wednesday's early release at 12:20 p.m.
And
I
just to
move.
clarify, the motion is to send the request to the board as is, right?
The motion is to send this to the full school board.
I move.
Okay, so that was from Vice Chair Bondo. And do we have a second?
I second.
Okay, thank you, Board Member Ali. Okay, so if you are in favor of this proposal, please raise your hand or your Zoom hand. Okay, it is unanimous. It passes. Thank you. Great.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Nina.
I know we have tomorrow still, so.
Thank you. Yes, but you're you're released if you want to be. Okay, so next up on the agenda is looking at proposed changes to policy BDE. The reason behind this is because from the spring and into the summer, the board had conversations about shaking up a little bit the way the committees were structured and operating. And so the proposed new structure that we're now sort of launching into as we get into the new school year has 4 regular committees, the first being finance, personnel, and operations, which has been the committee for the past couple of years anyway. But there would be a separate policy committee, separate from curriculum and student success, and then public and legislative affairs. So that has been public affairs, and there's an emphasis there on adding in the legislative affairs. And we are specifically bringing this to the committee tonight and hoping that it can look at this and take it forward to the board, the full board, for consideration at its regular meeting tomorrow evening. And I can pull up the actual changes if folks would like to look at those together, but I know that Chair Lentz was very involved in this, and I didn't know if you might want to speak to it as well.
The only 2 things that I would add, breaking out policy on its own, we still have a fair amount of policies, and I think we'll look at this later tonight, that just have not been touched in a really long time and really need updating. So to give a full committee the ability to move through that work potentially at a faster clip, even though I would say the last 2 iterations of policy and curriculum have been moving through a lot of work there, but that was the hope there. And then I think the other piece is in alignment more with the strategic plan around academic and outcomes for students and other student outcomes, really making sure that we had a committee to hold that as well. And so that's where the student success piece of the curriculum and student success committee has come from.
Great. Does anyone have any questions about this proposed change to the committee structure? Yes. Board Member Ali.
Yeah, the only question I have is where can we find the list of individuals that are supposed to be on which committee?
I believe we have that list that was shared with us a couple months ago.
We're sent out in an email by Chair Lentz.
I'm wondering if the website is updated with the new committee structures. The participants, I mean.
I think it was.
I'll just quickly look. That way it's available to the public as well.
I just added a link in the chat for the document that the board uses to track that. When I looked this morning on Diligent, it wasn't super clear who was on what committee, but it's possible that it's been updated since then.
And the Portland Schools website with the section about the school board has not been updated. So that would be something that we need to update as well. I will make a note of that. Okay. Does that link work for you, board member Ali Ellie? Great, cool. Okay. Any other questions?
Are you all able to see? I'm trying to project now the actual document. And again, this is in it's in Diligent. If you go in via the board page on our website, you can get to all of the documents for this evening's meetings. That's the public as well. These documents are all linked to the agenda for tonight. And I can just kind of walk through quickly what's here. But I think there's Chair Lentz has a hand up.
Yep, go ahead, Chair Lentz.
I just wanted to add in that first section, and Dr. Warren, I don't know if you were going to walk through that, but previous to this, there wasn't a lot of information in our policies about what an actual committee structure was meant to look like. So this is an attempt at naming that, like how many board members could be on a committee as the chair, do they have voting responsibilities or rights in each committee, how to not have a majority of the board on one committee, those kinds of things. Just laying that out as expectations in hopes that yeah, it's just more sustainable in terms of operationalizing committees.
Yeah, and often we try to put forward red lines for our proposed policy revisions, but this one was almost such a complete overhaul that we ended up not overwhelming people with red lines, because it's a lot easier just to read it clean from scratch. So again, it's sort of structured in terms of talking about the standing committees, how they're created, what their responsibilities are, how they function. And then it goes, obviously into a fair amount of detail, but then it goes into the specific committees and what the charge of each of those committees is, in this proposed new structure. Appointments is not an ongoing committee. Chair Lentz, I don't know if you want to speak to that one. It seems to come up periodically, but not like all the time.
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to that. So appointments is a standing committee that only meets when there is a board resolution that says that they should meet to appoint people to an ad hoc committee. So if there is a resolution, so like the boundaries committee, there was a resolution around that. When we did a superintendent search, the appointments committee was enacted through a board resolution, and then they run the process to recruit people for that committee, and they make the decisions and then bring a suggested slate to the board for final vote. So they don't make the final vote, but they bring the slate to the board for approval.
Thank you. And then this category of other is sort of interesting. When we put the policy through legal review, we were debating whether we should keep the dropout prevention task force, but they reminded us that that is a legal requirement under state law. And so I think we'll need to do a little bit of work to revisit that and make sure we actually have it in place and that it's operating according to statute. And then the Coordinated School Health Program Steering Committee is more of an as requested and needed, but it has to be here as something that can be created upon request. And then there's the potential for joint committees with the city and the city council. And then citizen advisory panels and, I think the boundaries work is probably a good example of that right now. And again, Chair Lentz, anything else you would add?
Does anyone else have any questions about this updated policy? Okay, I will be looking for a motion. Let's see, to update policy BDE, standing committees, special committees, and citizen advisory panels to move this revised policy to the full board. Okay, thank you, Board Member Yusra Ali. Do we have a second? Board Member Ali, thank you. Okay, please raise your hand or your Zoom hand if you're in favor of voting for this policy as revised to move to the full school board. Okay, so it's unanimous with the student representative voting with the board, with the committee. Great. Okay.
Oops. Great. We ready to move forward?
Yeah, let's see what's next. Okay, the next thing we have on our agenda is the draft committee agenda for the 2025-2026 policy committee.
Great. Let's see if I can project it. Okay. Is the schedule in front of you now?
Yes.
It's not fully trusting my Zoom skills. Okay. So this represents our best first effort, I think, to put together what I believe is a fairly robust calendar for the year. We have proposed to talk about it initially a little bit tonight and then come back again at the next meeting after folks have had a little more time to consider it, and maybe talk to other people, and then ideally to adopt the calendar for the year at the next meeting. That said, with policy, there's always the possibility of something coming up that we might need to add later. Either because there's a legal requirement that comes into play, or that our lawyers sort of flag for us, or something that arises through implementation or through dialogue with our stakeholders, the people that you all are serving and talking with. So knowing that anything we put down now could potentially change depending on where the committee decides to go and what things might come our way that we really have to address. So, and again, the other thing that happened through this sort of rethinking and restructuring of the committee work is that the committees will now meet twice a month. And so that gives us a little bit more opportunity to have these conversations, and also hopefully just to do a lot of cleaning up of policies that haven't been looked at in a while. So what you see here is a mix of things that are really required or needed, whether it's legally required or needed because of some implementation issue or because we're trying to do things that are in support of our strategic plan. Those things you will see in bold here. And then there are a couple of places where you'll see an update, and that is because there were important things that came up last year that we thought this committee would like to see an update on. Progressive discipline and policy around student personal devices and our cell phone free school policy were two of those. And then there's some other things in here that are have been raised by board members themselves, things like class size and gifted student policy that we would like to get into discussion about and potentially engage in a conversation around policy in those realms. So this is a mix. It is I'd say a relatively aggressive agenda. I will flag at the beginning of the year. We do really need to have soon the conversation around IJNDB, which is the student use of school issued computers, devices, and the internet. When we updated policy JFCK in June, when the board voted to pass that device-free schools policy, that put IJNDB out of date. So it's no longer aligned now to policy JFCK, and we need to make sure we get that aligned. In September, the JICIA, that was one last year where there was a particular wording issue that was flagged for us by a member of the community. We want to correct that, but we don't want to just do that in isolation. We want to make sure we're doing a thorough review of that policy overall while we have it open. ACAA, ACAB, unfortunately, these have been done not long ago, but we now have to go back with each administration at the federal level, the presidential administration. The federal guidance and requirements around harassment and sexual harassment have changed. And so effectively, we're going to have to go back and reestablish the policies that the Trump administration had required. So not very similar to what was being done under the first Trump administration. And then somewhat connected to that, policy GBEBB is actually referred to in our ACAA, but doesn't actually exist. And that's an important policy and a pretty glaring gap that we should have really corrected before. So we need to make sure to work on that one. And because it's a new policy, it will likely also have probably some, attention from various folks who will have an interest in, how it's written. So we are trying to give it plenty of room in the calendar for discussion before it actually gets voted on and sent to the board, which is why you'll see here that it's got at Chair Lena's request, it's got three different discussion times over the course of 3 meetings. Representative Lee, I see a hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just wondering in terms of the stuff you're talking about with what this committee is going to be doing in September. I feel like I've heard talk of potentially, like, will there be the creation of a new unified progressive discipline policy? Or am I kind of misinterpreting and this is more like reviewing these policies strictly to like in recognition of the new presidential administration? Or
Yep, sorry, I probably wasn't very clear about that. So these are separate topics. The progressive discipline update would be the staff who have been working together with members of the primarily with the PEA, so the teachers union, working on what our progressive discipline approaches at both the elementary and secondary levels. And that's work that's been going on. It was a task force last spring that was created jointly by the board and the district and the PEA. And then folks continued to work on it over the summer, particularly the school administrators, to flesh out a little bit more what that would look like in practice. And so we put this in here to hear back from them what they've actually been doing with that work so that the committee can kind of stay up to speed with what the task force was working on and where that work has led. So it's not actually a policy review as much as it is an update that sort of connects to a lot of other policies that we have. So that's separate. And then the ACAA, ACAB is a required policy shift that we have to do because of the changes at the federal level. So that's separate from the progressive discipline piece. And then GBEBB is not exactly required per se, but we need to have it both because it's a real gap in our policies, but also because our policy ACAA refers to it. And then there's no place to go to. It's like a blank, when if you were to click on the link, there's nowhere to go to because that policy hasn't been created. So we need to remedy that.
Okay. So essentially, it's like reviewing these existing policies to align with the findings of this progressive discipline task force more than the creation of any like new unified policy.
No, the
Take
progressive discipline is just a whole separate thing. It's not particularly connected. It would just be on the same night.
Okay. Thank
I
you.
have a clarifying question, Dr. Warren. Does the progressive discipline policy that the district is creating, does it have sort of a letter code that goes along with it? Is there a section that it will fall under?
So to the best of my knowledge, it's not an actual policy. It is a set of it's guidance essentially and procedures that would be in place. So, I mean, one thing we could do is go back and try to look more carefully at how it sort of nests under our discipline policies, because we do have policies related to discipline, but this is not technically policy. It's more work around procedures and practices that's been done at the request of the board and the union together. Chair Lentz, did you want to say anything else about that, how that came to be?
Yeah, I think it would be helpful to, see that alongside the policy that we have in place.
Mhm.
That would be good. And I just wanted to say one other thing. So Dr. Warren spent a lot of time putting together this spreadsheet that she sent by email just before the meeting, that does have all of the policies, and it lists when the policy was created and then when it was last reviewed. And it's important to note that there are some policies that we really haven't reviewed since, one of them said 1994 when I was quickly glancing at it. And some of them may still be relevant, and I think it's important that we go through and just make sure, the 1994, even if it stays the same, let's say theoretically that we just update it to 2025, 2026, so that we have looked through everything to make sure our policies are up to date. So that would be a great goal. I know there's so many to go through, but if there are any that are really, 20 to 30 years old, it would be really good to look through those.
Yeah, so let me explain the way I structured this, but based on what you're saying, it may be that the committee wants to take a different type of approach. So there's definitely priority here for things that really have to be done. Another one that you'll see here in November is an extreme temperature policy. That's a new state requirement that we need to meet. I put these IJOA, EBB, all of those in bold because those are, I'd say, safety issues that have been coming up in the past year where I think we need to do some tightening up as a district. Similarly with the school volunteers. And then you'll see I bolded a lot of things related to transportation because that's a strategic initiative that we'll be taking on in the coming year, where we'll need to be kind of simultaneously looking at and making sure we're tight on our policies. ICA, that's the annual review and approval of the school calendar. So that has to, come in there. I've got it, I think, relatively early in the year, but it'd be nice to get it done early. And then you'll see as well, when you get down to June, the annual required approval of the emergency management plan. But most of what you see other than that, those things in bold, really kind of starting from January and going through the end of the year, is picking out all of the policies in books A through roughly a third of the way through book E, right? So our policies are broken out by books and by themes. And so this is essentially doing a review and update of every policy in books A through halfway through E that have not been looked at in the last anything that's older than 5 years, right? So if it was before 2020, I included it in this list. If it was, hadn't been looked at in longer than 5 years. But that was just one way of cutting it and trying to kind of keep consistent in terms of like just getting through a whole book, so that we could say that we had completed certain books. But that's not necessarily the only way to sort of cut the cake, right? You could also choose to, pick another cutoff date and then just do any policy that's before a certain date without, just focusing in on particular books. So I think this is the kind of, consideration that the committee should be giving as you're thinking about this over the coming days as we get ready for the next meeting.
Yes, Board Chair Lins.
Thank you. I was wondering, Dr. Warren, if you could kind of clarify, when we think about policies that may come from the federal level or the state level, like how, like what takes precedence as those things move to us? I'm thinking about the sexual harassment policies. Like, how do we know? Yeah, like are the mandatory updates that we get, are those from the state level, or are they also from the federal level? What does that look like?
Yeah, it's a mix. So the ACAA, ACAB, that flows down from the federal changes. And in some ways, that one's relatively easy for us to do because we had to do it before. So we're essentially reverting back to a large extent to what was in place 2 administrations ago. But there's not a lot of that. I'd say more of the things that we're getting that are requirements tend to come from the state level. We're always trying to pay attention and see what's coming down and what's happening in the legislature, but we also get updates from our legal team at Drummond, and they let us know when things need to happen. The big one this year beyond, again, the federal changes that we knew were probably coming and they've alerted us to, it was that extreme temperature thing that the state particularly zeroed in on this year, which actually we've already been working on anyway, because we've had our own, we weren't working on it as a policy per se, but we were working on guidance. We've been dealing with this last summer and this summer in particular, trying to run ESY and other summer programming with students out on buses, students at our schools, just basically writing our own internal guidelines to make sure that we were keeping students safe. So we, in that case, while it's a required thing from the state, and we will get guidance from the state and from our lawyers, we had already done quite a bit of work on that one. The other requirement, and you all can pat yourselves on the back for this, the other requirement that came down after the board voted on the cell phone and personal devices policy there's a mandate from the state that every school district have a policy related to cell phones in schools. It doesn't say what the policy has to be, but it's a mandate that every school district has a policy, and this board was actually out ahead of the state in creating that kind of a policy. Even though I noticed the other morning that public radio didn't give us credit for that. They made it sound like the board had done it because of the state mandate, but that wasn't actually how it worked out. Did that answer the question? I don't know if I.
Yep. So we'll have the next 2 weeks to go through this. And then next week it looks like we'll have a second discussion and a vote on it. So I would encourage you all to, take some time to look through it. And Dr. Warren, we can access all of the policies through Diligent now. Is that correct?
Yep.
And if you have any that you click on that, look to you, something that is really important that we should be considering that's not on this list, definitely, send me a message, Dr. Warren a message. We can make sure we discuss it next meeting. But does anyone else have any questions about the proposed calendar for this policy committee? Okay, great.
Quick question.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
If when we look at the policies, if we find, sorry, are we voting on the schedule? Okay,
Not
never
today.
mind then. Okay.
Okay. Okay. I think that's the last thing on our agenda. And so I'd be looking for a motion to end the meeting. Thank you, Board Member Ali Ali. Do we have a second? Can a student representative second?
So I meant to mention this earlier, but at the committee level, the way the policy is written, students have full voting access. So
cool.
yes.
Great. Okay, thank you, Student Representative Lee. Okay, all in favor of adjourning the meeting, please raise your hand. Okay, we are ending at 6:54 p.m. And just a quick reminder, those of you that are on another committee, we have other committee meetings starting at 7:30 this evening. So enjoy the little break and see some of you in a few minutes. Thank you, Dr. Warren.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening.